Welcome to Toastmasters Bay to Bay, where we feature District 4 Toastmasters from San Francisco to Monterey. Tonight we have a very special program. We will hear a speech, an evaluation. We will find out a speech contest, and there will be a presentation, an educational presentation. So to get everything started, let's welcome Richard Waldman. Richard Waldman will be giving speech number 7 in his Competent Communicator Manual entitled, "There is an Order to Change." Richard Waldman, there is an order to change.
Thank you, Henry. At the end of my presentation, you will have a strategy that will enable you to change your thinking just like that. It's a privilege to be able to address an aspect of my profession as a life coach that impacts all of us all the time, and that's change. But we hate change. We try to change our weight, we try to change our relationships, we try to change how we feel, and in spite of what we say we want, we usually end up doing what we've always done, leaving us to wonder, why didn't I change? Now, what do I mean by change? Well, change can be as simple as not doing what we've always done, but that can be a challenge. But you would think with all the self-help books that have been written over the centuries that go all the way back to the time of Cain, you would think this issue of us changing would have been solved, but no. We're still doing what we've always done because an important part of our education is missing. And here's the missing link. We humans pay a heavy price for having a highly creative brain that has created, without our knowledge and without our permission, a likeness of who our brain thinks we are that speaks to us in negative tones and calls us dummy and stupid and says that we don't have what it takes. Now, this positive and negative stuff is nothing new. I mean, history is rich with all sorts of metaphors, such as the tree of life, the tree of good and evil, the yin, the yang, the true and the false self that warn of this duality, which raises a question. What does this duality look like? My order to life diagram is my attempt to address what makes up this duality. So let's begin by examining our positive self, that part of us that enables us to change, which is predicated on awareness. That is being aware of which side of the paradox our thoughts and emotions are coming from and what we will create if we harbor or act upon them. But to have this level of awareness requires a certain presence of mind, which brings us to the present moment. The power of the present moment is such that change can only occur in the present moment. And the chatter in our head knows this, which is why it likes to take us into the future and beat us up with what I call what-if questions that we cannot answer. What if I lose my job? What if I can't find another job? What if, what if, what if? And when the future doesn't work, it'll pull us into the past and lambaste us with what we should or should not have done. You should have sold that property back in 2005. You shouldn't have bought that stock. And before we can say ping pong, we find the chatter in our head is bouncing us back and forth between the future where fear resides and in the past where regret is alive, and we wonder why we don't change. But this doesn't happen, this awareness doesn't happen by accident. We have to choose it, which brings us to conscious choice. Let me ask you, when Captain Schulenberger, the pilot who landed his plane in the Hudson River, when he discovered there was no power to the aircraft, did he panic or was he making conscious choices? He was making conscious choices, wasn't he? Finding peace in the problem enabled Captain Schulenberger to complete his mission. Now let's take a look at that aspect of us that does not want us to change, which is the negative self. And it all starts with judgment, which is unique to only us humans. For example, when we look at the other primates, we notice that they don't judge other members in their troop because their fur is lighter or darker, or because one is taller or shorter, or heavier or thinner. They don't do that, but we do. Judgment ignites the chatter in our head that is more notorious than one might think. For example, there's a line in the story of Adam and Eve that says, the serpent is more subtle than any beast the Lord God had created. And that's because the chatter in our head has slithered its way into our psyche, disguises us, and speaks with a forked tongue that offers the evidence, which usually comes in the form of what he or she did or said, in the hope that we will react. And react we do, with all sorts of negative thoughts and emotions that keep us in a judgmental orbit outside of the realm that enables us to change. So the next time you find yourself in a mental dilemma, I want you to ask yourself, what am I judging? And what is the chatter in my head telling me and showing me that would cause me to be more attracted to suffering than to being aware, living in the present moment, making conscious choices, and being one with peace, which is the only state of mind that shares common ground with the universe. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, Richard, I don't know if I believe all this stuff. And that's fine. And my response is, then you have what you have. But let me offer you a personal guarantee, in that if you do not choose the self that you want to live through, the chatter in your head is going to choose for you. And what it chooses will not enable you to change. Mr. Toastmaster.
Richard, thank you very much. What a very inspirational speech.
Well, thank you.
I'm just wondering, how long have you been a Toastmaster?
Approximately 2 years, Henry.
And which club are you a member of?
I'm a member of the Morgan Hill Toastmasters.
Well, thank you for giving me so much to think about.
Thank
I'll
you.
Watch out for that chatter in my head. Thank you. Thank you again, Richard. I'd like to invite up Frank Young now to give his evaluation of Richard's wonderful speech. Frank Young.
Thank you, Henry, and thank you, Richard, for a wonderful speech. That speech was good for a lot of reasons, and I'll start off with talking about your structure and your intro. On your intro, you stated the purpose of the speech. You said, when this speech is done, etc., etc., etc. You told the audience what to expect, and I think that that really sets the standard, and it lets your audience follow your speech. So you got into the body of your speech, and your structure flowed well. You had a number of anecdotes and examples. I compliment you on picking up the example of the airline pilot. It's a current event. It's something that people can connect to, something they wrote about recently, perhaps may have had an emotional impact. Your eye contact, and particularly when you're using your props, your eye contact with the audience was excellent, because it's easy to look at your props too much. So those are some of these things that you did well. Your body language, your general presence was positive and confident. Your voice exuded sincerity, and your body language was limited, yet it was very clear and focused. So you talked about back and forth on some certain things, or you talked about the animals and how they aren't judgmental on different colors comparable to human race. So I think that the speech's strengths were the structure and the content, and your delivery was very good. Now, I think that you have some areas that potential for improvement. You used the prop. This prop here is good for this size audience. I would suggest that you go with larger letters and props. If you were in a larger venue, a larger audience, it'd be difficult to read. Then your presence was excellent, and the questions that you asked during your speech, and in some cases you asked the audience something about what they've done, and then you started, but you need more of a pause, because a pause allows the audience to connect and to think of the answer to your question before you give them. So those are some simple things that I think you can implement, and I thank you. And Mr. Toastmaster?
That was a great evaluation, Frank. Thank you. Frank gave some specific points on what Richard did well and how he might improve. Excellent evaluation. Thank you so much. Now, have you ever wondered what's a speech contest? Why would we even want a speech contest? Very competitive society we live in, isn't it? But I think let's ask Joe Madley to come up and tell us a bit about speech contests.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. Why contests? Ever thought about participating in one? At one point in my Toastmasters career, which was about 1.5 years after I joined Toastmasters, I asked myself that question. And I'm going to tell you a little about my personal experiences in just a moment. But first, I'm going to tell you about why Toastmasters looks at having contests. There are two objectives as far as Toastmasters are concerned. The first is to set an example for our members so they can improve by looking at other better speakers. The second is that it presents the speaker an opportunity to improve their skills by speaking in a different venue outside their club, which brings me to my personal experience. I had joined Toastmasters, belonged to a club in the Silicon Valley. I'm not going to mention the name of the club because it no longer exists. We were bought out by another company and the club went away, primarily because the company moved back to Florida. I was very comfortable speaking in front of the 15 or 16 people on a weekly basis. I had no idea what was going to happen when I went to my first area contest. I did win my club contest, went on to the area, which is the next step. I walked into the room, and I was early. There were already 50 people in the room. I was petrified. I'd never spoken in front of a group of 50 people. I'm in sales. My audience is 2 people usually, maybe 3. It's a big crowd as far as a sales presentation. By the time the contest began, there were 70 people in the room. I was petrified. I gave my presentation, didn't win, but I knew what to expect the next time that I spoke at a contest. Now, I'm going to give you a little overview of the contest seasons. There are 2. One is in the fall, and we're in the spring contest season right now. One of the contests is called Table Topics. And Table Topics is something that we practiced in the club. We have a contest for that. The real-life application is that you're given a topic on an impromptu basis. You have no idea what the question is going to be, and you're asked to stand and give an answer in 1 to 2 minutes. Real-life application. Your boss walks up to you and asks you, how's that project doing? How you answer that question may in fact determine whether you stay on that project, or in these days and times, whether you stay with the company. The other contest is the International Speech Contest. This is a unique contest in that it goes all the way to our international convention in August. The other contests start at the club level. They go to the area, which is a group of 5 to 6 clubs, division, which is a group of 4 to 6 areas, and finally to the district, which, as you heard from Henry, runs all the way from San Francisco down to King City, actually, just a little south of Monterey. And you have the opportunity to speak with a very large audience at the international level. There's usually around 3,000 people in the room. If you win that contest, you're known as the world champion of public speaking, and you're invited back the following year to tell how you did it, at Toastmasters' expense, by the way. Now, if you're going to participate in a contest, I would suggest you do 2 things. One is really work on your speech. Practice it a number of times. The second is find a mentor, someone that you trust, an experienced Toastmaster that can in turn help you with your speaking technique to improve that, your gestures to make sure that they are good gestures, your organization, because if you're competing against the best of the best, you want a well-organized speech. And finally, you might want to do something a little different in your presentation. One of the speech contestants ended up flat on his face on the floor at the beginning of his speech and delivered the opening to his speech from the floor. Now, if you have in fact participated in speech contests, I would encourage you to continue doing that. Why? Because you want to win at the highest level. You want to be able to improve your skills with Toastmasters so that when you have a business presentation, presentation to a social club, presentation that may be for your next job, you'll be at your best. If you've yet to participate in a contest, I would encourage you to do so. It will really benefit, again, your speaking skills, and it will give you the opportunity of speaking in front of a different type audience. Mr. Toastmaster.
Well, thank you so much for that presentation. And we all see how important that speech contest can be and how valuable they are to Toastmasters. Well, next we have Diane Vaughn. Her presentation will be Walking the Talk Through Hard Times, an educational topic. Please welcome Diane Vaughn.
Thank you. When we think of Toastmasters, what comes to mind? Fear of speaking in public? A person would rather die than speak in public. When actually it's a fact, the moment you step out of your front door, whatever you're doing or wherever you're going, depending on the circumstances, you will find yourself involved in public speaking. Perhaps it's the elevator speech. Perhaps you're talking to your boss. Perhaps you're fiddling around on your desk crafting a voicemail message to an important client. Perhaps you're finding the words to talk to that spouse after an argument. No matter what, you will find yourself in a situation where you're either selling yourself or selling your ideas. And the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, in the world that we live in today, in the economy that we live in today, there is no room for error. When opportunity knocks, when opportunity presents itself, when opportunity arises, whether it may be a layoff, whether it's your boss saying, Tony, how about doing that presentation? Can you do it in 20 minutes? Oh, the nervousness one would feel. Perhaps it would be the one opportunity of a lifetime that would change your career, that would change your future, that would change whether you're a success or a failure. An opportunity that you would not be able to make not one mistake. And all of a sudden, things like eye contact, self-confidence, posture, body language, structure in your message starts to mean something. What would one do when faced with those challenges? In 1989, as a quiet paralegal in a corner of a legal department, I joined Toastmasters. I never realized that in joining Toastmasters in 1989, it meant a career change, promotions, raises, more promotions to an executive level, being a paid professional speaker, and lastly, an inspiration and a coach to others. I'm saying to you that today that you can't afford not to belong to Toastmasters. The only thing that you can invest in today and know that you'll get return on your investment is Toastmasters. Now, this may look like my notes here that I have, but actually what it is before I came here today, I thought that I would list the things that took me from a paralegal in a legal department, quiet and shy, not wanting to speak, to where I stand before you today. As I mentioned before, Toastmasters is the key or the ticket to help you walk your talk through these hard times. So first of all, you get mentorship. Where else would you go for pennies a day instead of thousands of dollars spent on a workshop or a seminar where you're mentored on the job training? So in other words, you're going to learn as you're doing. Building your self-confidence, developing communication skills, structured and effective communication, oral and written, awareness of various communication types, presentation skills, training facilitation, marketing techniques, public relations methods, various management skills, time management, organization, multitasking, how to conduct effective meetings, listening skills, giving feedback and evaluations, self-awareness of your leadership styles, building your leadership skills, impromptu speaking, discussion leading, demonstration speaking, audio and video training, public speaking on television, sales presentations, storytelling, accountability, decision making, how to motivate others to perform, mentoring others, coaching others, conflict resolution, stress management, team building, self-awareness, goal setting, campaign management, event planning, a testing ground for work-related presentations, a huge network of friends and acquaintances to support your system. Believe it or not, I could go on. Any and every Toastmaster you would meet would have their own list of things that they've learned. They'd have their own story, like mine when I was a paralegal and shy and not talking, and where Toastmasters brought them, how Toastmasters changed them. They will attest to that story. Right now, I'm a hiring manager. I hire lots of people all at once, and I interview them. And my heart goes out to a person that has cold hands, and they're shaking. And when I ask the interview questions, they grope for the words, and they struggle. And perhaps they're very qualified for the job, but their communication skills put up a barrier where they cannot present who they really are and convey who they really are, to sell who they really are to me. So, unfortunately, they're not hired. Many hiring managers today don't even look at the employee's face. They call you on the phone. Can you imagine being judged by your voice if you're silent, if you have no words, if there is no eye contact? So can't you see that these skills that I talked about, how very valuable they would be when one would say, let me tell you a little about myself. Let me tell you, let me sell you how the assets I have and the capabilities I have will help you, your company. Well, I wouldn't be able to hold myself back from inviting that person for a face-to-face interview. Yes, it is hard times. People are losing their jobs. People are struggling and wondering how am I going to make it? Without these skills, you will not make it. So Toastmasters has a welcome mat out to you. We will walk you through your hard times as you walk the talks that you learn with Toastmasters. So imagine you're a manager and you become better at work all of a sudden. You manage your time better and your tasks get accomplished. You meet your objectives. You're a team player with your peers. You motivate your team to achieve and perform. You give presentations so well that you get a promotion. When people leave your meeting, they're focused and task-driven instead of confused and glad to get out. When you know your strengths and your weaknesses, who else can judge you? You know your passion and what you're good at, and you know what you do not want to do. You know how to write a resume that's objective. Your relationships improve because you're a communicator. You're mission and goal focused. You present yourself with confidence, and you're poised under fire. Ladies and gentlemen, I am selling you the best deal in town today. There's no stock that's more valuable than the stock within yourself. Many of us are living out chapters in a book that someone else wrote. Isn't it time you wrote a chapter for yourself? So, Toastmasters and Indeed is your life insurance policy. It's your survival, and we definitely will help you walk your talk through the hard times of these times. Mr. Toastmaster.
Diane, that was a wonderful speech. It was very motivational.
Thank
I
you.
was getting shakes just listening to you. That was great.
Thank you.
Just wondering, how long have you been a Toastmaster?
20 years this year, actually.
And I understand you have a secret nickname. Can
Yeah,
you tell
I
me
do.
about that?
It's Powerhouse.
Powerhouse. Can you tell me how you got it?
Long story.
Wow. If you ever think of a good nickname for me, please email me.
I will.
Thank you, Diane.
You're welcome.
Thank you. This was a wonderful meeting. I think we all got a taste of how wonderful Toastmasters is in helping to develop our leadership and communication skills. We heard a speech, we heard an evaluation, we had an educational topic, and we learned how valuable that speech contests are. I think that Toastmasters can help everyone. Toastmasters has a broad range of skills and experiences to help people with. So if you think you can find a Toastmasters club near you, I know you can, please come and enjoy the experience. You will not regret it. Toastmasters is just a wonderful club to join, and from tonight's, you can see how we do. Now, from Toastmasters Bay to Bay, from San Francisco all the way down the peninsula, through Silicon Valley to Monterey, there are clubs waiting to find you, or you to find them. Thank you.